This is the Business Storytelling Show, a top global marketing podcast listened to in more than 100 countries, live streamed on social media, and broadcast on DBTV. Christoph Trapp chats with industry leaders to help your company tell better business stories. Here's today's episode.
Hey, business storytellers. How's everyone doing? Episode 681. Really appreciate everybody still tuning in. And today we're going to talk about how to scale AI in content marketing. What's interesting about that topic, the person that is going to join me is Jeff Coyle, who is actually setting out to set the standard for content quality, which is a very interesting mix because a lot of the crap some of you are creating with AI is literally just that crap. He has co-founded marketmuse.com. We're going to throw that up at the bottom there. I've been around the content marketing world, like literally for a while here, including content marketing world. Haha, get it, everybody? Okay, let's get Jeff on the show and let's find out how to scale AI. How do we make sure content is of good quality? And what is good quality anyways? Who decides? So let's find out. Jeff, welcome. Nice to see you.
What's happening? How are you? Thanks for the great intro. And yes, what is content quality? That's like one of my favorite topics these days because it changes, it seems, every few months based on what's working.
It certainly does, but it's probably the truth, right? Would you agree that a lot of people are creating literal crap with, I mean, maybe not literal, but crap with AI?
Absolutely. I mean, it is everybody's jumping to the end. And that's the biggest thing that I've seen as a mistake. It's going from idea and thinking that going right to drafting, text for a page is the right approach. And they're skipping hundreds of years of editorial process and all of the things that make teams differentiated and novel and exciting. And that's really what, my mission has always been to, get ahead of. And now that, the world is what the world is with language models, it's become, we have to make the wild, wild west not so wild if you really want your sites to perform.
What's interesting to me too is, I mean, I use AI all the time, especially to brainstorm, right? So for example, if I have a social post and I was like, so I wrote the social post and I was like, I go into Claude and I say, hey, make this snappier or like improve the opening,
Right.
or like I need 10 ideas for a subject line for my email, for example. But what I found is even when I have my source content, it still takes some bending Claude AI to my will, right? It's not usually like my first attempt, like probably never, ever, and I have to be like, nope, I want it like this, sentence case. Nope, wrong emojis. You know what I mean? Like, don't puke out emojis. Stop it. See a doctor. So what are the ways to use AI to actually have good quality content?
Well, I think that, everyone's on their own evolution of what they understand about AI and what it means and what it works. There's so many different branches of AI that one can use in order to improve the end game, whatever that end product is. And the way I always like, if someone's just thinking about it like, hey, Chat GPT equals AI, I'm always like, well, Grammarly and Google Smart Compose, if you have Gmail or Google Workspace, auto completing your sentences and such, those are branches of AI too. There's a lot more to it than just the $20 thing that you have access to. So the first thing I like to make sure that people are thinking about is, have you done an inventory of all of the steps? You just laid one out: ideation, campaign management, repurposing processes for your social. But have you laid out all the stuff that you're actually doing manually that artificial intelligence can improve against? And the challenges then you have are, well, if I'm going to use technology that I have access to help me with strategy, how do I know that it's predictive in any way? If it's not using any of my data, how can it possibly be predictive of performance, or that it uses my expertise or my knowledge or the details about my business, maybe business conversion rates, or my existing website. So then everybody starts thinking more critically about, oh wow, I can use artificial intelligence to capture my team's expertise or my personal expertise, to have access to, my entire website, to understand what would be more performant, maybe my CRM, or if I'm an e-commerce shop, maybe my sales data. And I need to start thinking critically about using the information that makes me special if I want what's going to be coming out of the end of this, factory to come out special and not have to be so radically changed at the end. Because why build something that's uninspired and miserable and crap, like you mentioned, and then have to go in and redo it. It just brings everybody's feelings down about this process. It makes everybody feel like this actually isn't helping them. It's not causing them to be better. It's just causing them to be able to make more mediocre stuff. And that's the fight. The fight is, if you create something that's not representing your business well and you publish it, that's the problem, right? If you don't know if it's going to be performant, that's problem too. You're just kind of publishing and hoping. And that's where you were before you had AI, you were just publishing and hoping. So is that really a huge improvement? I want to take, when I work with teams, I want to take them through their entire inventory, or their entire content inventory, their entire process of planning, research, planning, prioritization. Do they have an artifacting or a briefing process that's involved? Do they understand their existing performance, their existing authority, where they excel, where they don't? Or maybe they have to publish an entire collection of content, and maybe something that they're already winning and have momentum. Maybe they only have to publish one article on that topic each month, right? So going through the process and saying, first of all, where are you making guesses today? What process are you doing manually? And what of your existing business data or business information or stuff that you care about, maybe data that you care about, is involved in those decisions? And when the answer is, I'm guessing, brainstorming, or I already know how to do this, and I'm not using any of my existing data, or it is, I'm just punching in a prompt into ChatGPT, I know we got problems. And that's where every team should start. If they've got people using artificial intelligence in a way that's not being monitored and managed, and there's not, prompt library sharing, there's no agentic processes in place, which would mean basically someone's using a custom agent that is, or custom model that's trained on their data. Anything that's done generically or in a silo with AI that's part of your content strategy or content marketing or writing process is probably a major problem for your business, because it's yielding crap and it's unmanaged.
Probably we have set the record already for the word crap in an episode of Business Storytelling Show. Crap, by the way, of course. I did start it. So in case anybody's wondering, crap is actually an industry acronym, stands for content really annoying to people. So that's why we keep using it. But what's interesting to me is, first of all, share the prompts, but you also, so first of all, AI uses certain words and certain setups and sentences, right? And I actually think, if you use AI, you have to make sure you don't use those phrases, because everybody starts using them. So you have to kind of watch out for that. And some of those words, transform, unleash. I mean, woof, woof. Are we all dogs now? Like, I've never seen those words. I mean, they're actually strong words, but I haven't seen them this much before AI, or like bulleted lists nonstop. What else? Delve.
I was just about to say, let me delve into why that happens.
Do it.
And that's it. I mean, and that's important. And so that's why in MarketMuse's most recent release, content strategy AI platform, which we've built a number of trained models that do things that editorial teams and writing teams have problems with. One, does cluster analysis for you, but doesn't just, put words into groups and chuck you a spreadsheet. It actually analyzes the output and prioritizes it and starts to lead you down the path of planning for what are you going to do after you've clustered that, right? We've also, though, for our brief generation innovations, we've created what we call our human in the loop process. So basically, you can coach it away from things you don't like, which is, the Delves equation, right? But you can also put in your expertise and have that shape even the briefs and the artifacts that you create. So my personal experience, I was joking around with a friend of mine who runs a pet site, and in every one of his briefs that I was building for him, I made sure that every section mentioned my dog and my dog's name and special things about him. So we were, those are the types of things that you need to be reflected, not even just in your drafts, but in the strategy. So if you have a brand, style, tone, voice, if you want your writer to have a particular point of view, the system better know that even before outlines are being generated and briefs are being generated, because that's then going to ensure that you're building a narrative that you or I, if I'm the writer, would actually build. So what you're seeing a lot of times is people are saying, okay, well, make me this generic, thing, and then I'm gonna prune, I'm gonna clean it up, and make it better. And you're missing the point. It's possible to get earlier in the process so that the format and the structure of the page that you're going to create already has your thumbprint on it, already understands you, because you may never, in your article, just basically what you said, you may never build a section of an article called, case studies. I'm just making something, or conclusion, right? But to build a great universal template, it should have introduction and conclusion characteristics, right? So those, and then if you never want to use the word, dog, and you only want to use the word canine, well, you can train a model on that linguistic context. If you are speaking to, people who are, over 60 in Wisconsin, well, you can define that as well and make sure that the article you're going to create in the first place is targeted for them. You don't have to only do that as checks and balances after the product's already been written, because you just miss so much. I mean, there isn't a copy editing system. There isn't a fact checking process. There aren't editorial checks and balances. I mean, with these large editorial teams who have been publishing for years, they don't do post-publish editing. Think about that. What if it was a newspaper, for example, and you had to go to print, right? You have these processes in place for good reasons. So get ahead of it, put more of your thumbprint on it earlier in the process. I mean, that's the entire software that, MarketMuse is built. It's get ahead of this before you hit publish, get ahead of this before you go to draft. It's going to be a lot less work. You're going to have a lot more wins. You're going to have a lot higher batting average. And then when you go back to update it, use the data. What's performing? How is the intent, or has the market changed for this topic? Okay, well, now update it based on that. Maybe you made some mistakes, but don't make fixing mistakes part of your process. It's just self-defeating, and it also brings morale of teams down. I mean, if you've got a writer who's a subject matter expert and you're telling them that they're going to get some generic, garbage draft to clean up and add their spin on it or add their take to it, that person's not going to be working for you that long.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And when I just listened to you 20 years ago, we did articles, like we did the outline, and then to an extent, we literally just filled in the outline, right? I mean, I know it's a little bit more involved than that, but if you really were to oversimplify it, that's kind of what we did. And this is really no different, right? I mean, you have the strategy, here's the keywords you're going after, here's the stories, here's the unique things. And then, go. We don't just go there and say, hey, write an article on whatever. We bring all those different things to the table. The other thing I want to mention, I put this up here a while back, Opus Clips, video clips, check that out. That is a fantastic tool that I use. And they actually asked me, so I take this episode, put it into Opus Clips, and it gives me 10 sound bites from both of us. And they asked me, how much money are you saving, Christoph? And I said, I'm not sure I'm saving any money, because in the past I wouldn't have hired an editor for $2,000, right, to do all these clips. Right. But now it takes me 20 minutes, and fantastic. So it's unbelievable how you can scale it. But let's talk about the scaling part a little bit. How can AI So that's one way AI can help me scale my content production.
Mhm.
I can edit this episode if I wanted to, in like what the script or wherever other places, just the text, and boom, right? I'm done so much quicker than I used to be. What other ways can you scale AI in your content?
I'm going to answer that question too, but I something you said really in a positive way triggered me a minute ago, because so many times when I'm talking to teams, they're like, "Oh wow, that would have taken me 5 days, and you did it in 10 minutes." So the fact that it would have taken them 10 days, they've taken it out of their arsenal. They don't believe that they will actually do that, right? So content inventorying is a great example. Um, Using one's own data to inform content decisions and prioritization. People think that's going to take them forever, so they just say, I've got to wing it. Maybe I'll just use this one data point. Quite commonly, unfortunately, it's search volume. So one thing that AI brings you is you can actually do stuff that you know is the right thing to do. You just didn't do it before. Like you know that if you could crack up this article into the best video clips, it's going to be a great thing to have to promote, right? Well, there are now dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of those things. That all should be part of your content strategy. So what I challenge teams to do is like, what are the things, what is your wish list, right? What is your wish list of things that you just like are putting, are best practices, but you would never do them? I mean, doing a content audit or inventory every month, people are like, yeah, right. I only get to do that once a year. I'm like, no, you can do that, all the time, every month, if you wish, and effectively, no matter how large your team is. So that's a big thing. Scaling the amount of best practice actions and motions your team takes is one of my favorite things with scaling AI. Another one is, because you have a higher batting average with your content, you can ask for budget and get it to do things, right? So let's just say usually I need 10, I'm going to write 10 articles this month, right? And your boss says, why? And you're like, it's just how we've always done it. It's just because I think we need, well, when you can say, well, actually, this is the right number of pages we need to create and update, based on this data set, based on this predictive model, great. And now you publish those 10 articles, and before you were only having one of them be successful, but now 50% of them are successful, right? You go back for more budget, say, hey, I published those 10 articles, 50% of them were successful because I used that data set. This is no longer a black box for us. Okay, well, guess what I'm scaling? I'm scaling my budget. So now I'm scaling my effective use of best practices. I'm scaling the budget I'm able to get from my team. Now, all of those things are way more important than scaling the number of pages you publish.
I think what's interesting too is it does help you, as you mentioned, that batting average. And some people, I know there's many people out there who say quality over quantity. And you know what? Yes, don't just puke out trash. But I think it was James Clear in Atomic Habits, right? He said the people who actually came up with a perfect or close to perfect picture were the ones that were just snapping away. And the ones that actually tried to get a perfect picture, they came back with one picture and it was not perfect. So there is something to be said about what's the right content velocity, I guess, that you
Right.
go after. But how do you determine what that is? How do you determine what the right volume is?
It's got to be based on the mission, right? So the reason why you're doing it. So the way I like to think about it is, I've got a couple different machines in play to decide on velocity, and velocity for creation and updates. So updates, quite often the forgotten velocity, I'd say, need to be established during briefing time. And people are like, what are you talking about? Because when I'm building a brief, I'm looking at all the content that exists on the internet about this concept. I'm looking at all my other pages that I have about this concept. And I'm determining how frequently the intent of this, whatever the keyword or topic is changing, or how much recency or temporal changes are there. So I'm saying, hey, I probably want to check this out every quarter to do an update, because that's about the time that this market will shift. Changes are happening, or this is a running news story about this particular sports player, so I need to update this every week for a while, right? So I need my update frequency is the velocity that's dictated by the market, effectively, and my other publishing. For a creation, I'm thinking of a couple things. I'm thinking about the competitive landscape, what's out there. I'm thinking about the actual, not to get too nerdy, but the linguistics of this thing. What would it take to cover this thing as if I were an expert? And then I'm looking at the buyer and information journey. Do I have coverage of this appropriate for my audience at the early stage awareness, consideration, purchase, post-purchase troubleshooting? So I want to determine how much content I need based on covering this topic comprehensively and building a beautiful cluster of content. And then what does the competitive landscape dictate? I then can say, how quickly do I want to win this thing, right? And then I can determine what path I can take. So it'll commonly turn into me telling an editorial team they need to write 26 articles about, that particular breed of cat. And they go, whoa, we don't want to write 26 articles. And I said, well, that's what you need in order to cover this comprehensively. Then based on their resourcing, they can determine, oh, that's something we're going to do over 3 months. What's our best 5 articles this month? Well, then we'll start at the head of the snake and walk all the way down to the tail until we have that in motion. And we can dictate what's our ongoing velocity in order to stay relevant for this particular breed of cat, right? What do we need to publish to maintain or keep ahead of our competitors on this, right? So that's the kind of, money ball. We're using a lot of baseball terms. That's the kind of money ball that I'm typically promoting to get to velocity. It's all about competitive landscape as well as what would it really take to know the most and exhibit your business's best practice, exhibit your business's differentiated value. And you can do that, with those 3 pieces.
How much time should companies spend looking at these different tools? I mean, like really quickly here, I have to put you on the pitch clock because we're about to run out of time. But like how much time should people spend on even looking for the different tools and evaluating?
I think right now, the market's moving so fast. I think it has to be an everlasting process. I think you always have, if you're using a process or a solution for more than a year in the same way, you're probably behind. There's a lot of advancement happening. It doesn't mean that is no good anymore. It just means that maybe you need to get another thing and add it to that process particularly, right? And what you also want to keep an eye out for is if a solution is, if the advice that they're giving is very Main Street is what I'll call it, right? So this is maybe a software solution that you look at and you're like, oh, I get the same response that they do? Okay, cool. Well, so you're giving the same advice to company A as you are to company B? Okay, cool. How do you think that that's going to work, right? And that's, always been the biggest problem. Or their personalization is, not legit for you. It's not telling your story. It's nothing, unless you're telling somebody how to truly differentiate and give blue ocean value, right now, it's not good enough. And that's what you have with a lot of the more, they're giving the average answer to appeal to the most audiences. And for content, you don't want to be there right now.
You don't want to be the average.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeff, really appreciate you coming on the show. Time flies when you have fun. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're out.
Thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review the Business Storytelling Show on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe so you